they've picked up an interesting tactic of Hamas. And I think Eric Weinstein said this first, but they've picked up a tactic which is, Hamas's tactic is, please kill my people for the cameras. Or even kill me for the cameras, or kill my son for the cameras. And students at Columbia and elsewhere seem to be saying, hit me or hurt me, policeman, for the cameras.
How you guys doing? This is Official Sahar TV, and today we're watching another great video. This time we're watching Douglas Murray on a panel discussing about Hamas, Palestine, and of course their tactic to win the war. Let's take a look. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 50,000 subscribers, so don't forget to do so if you enjoy the content. Let's continue. Let's watch.
I think there is a way. I think quite a lot of people are saying we don't know. I mean, look at the people who are denying October 7th and have spent the last 6 months, for instance, completely unnecessarily denying that there were, for instance, rapes of Israeli women by Hamas on the day. But why do they do that? I mean, it can't be that they just haven't looked into it, or it can't be that they've looked into it and persuaded that the video evidence isn't what it is, and the evidence of the first responders isn't what it is, and the evidence of the people in the morgues isn't what it is. It's that they cannot face up to what their own side does.
So there's sort of willful ignorance. They're trying to sort of psychologically insulate themselves from,
you know, it reminds me of something, I don't want to make the obvious comparison, but it reminds me of what people did after the Holocaust who still wanted to be Nazis. There's a great book by a German writer, Bettina Stangnev, called Eichmann Before Jerusalem, in which he described how these neo-Nazis in South America in the 1950s desperately wanted to believe that the Holocaust hadn't happened because they realized already it was a big problem for their side. And they weren't going to actually be able to get Nazism back or fascism back in Europe so long as there was this PR problem, which is how they saw it. And they get Eichmann in Argentina, and they have these tape recording sessions with him in which, among other things, Eichmann badly misreads his audience with one of the most fascinating problems of the 20th century. He gives these speeches explaining how he killed 6 million Jews.
Yeah.
And the room goes silent when he finishes because that's not what we wanted to hear.
Right.
Now, why did they not want to hear it? Because they wanted to get around the Holocaust, because they realized that there was no way you could do fascism or Nazism ever again. You would have to walk through the Holocaust, and therefore it couldn't be done. And that's what the people, I think, that's why I say it's eminently possible for them to try to get around it. Because, I mean, if somebody I supported or you supported, like, went into a country and started raping women and shooting them in the head as you rape them, I think the only thing we could do would be to say, and we would say, is like, that has happened and it's appalling and I wonder whether my side's going wrong. Yeah. But that requires a degree of honesty, which, and it's much easier, and I think most people do, just you get around it. Yeah. You can't walk through that. They get around it. So they say, oh, it's been exaggerated, or it didn't happen, or I don't want to read about it, or it's PR, or what about Gaza? And so it's easy for these people.
Yeah, so there is, easy for these people, various forms of denial, trying to get around it. And there's another feature of denial, and I remember a thinker in the Netherlands, Paul Scheffer, used to talk about it, and he called it indifference. To what extent do we have people, just large audiences, who know perfectly well and understand exactly what it entails, but take on, maybe it's also a form of denial in itself, take on this indifferent attitude. It's not happening to me, it's not happening in my neighborhood, it's happening there.
Well, there's something that happens, I mean, there's something fascinating that happens with the nature of violence, which is that it's like something shatters around you, is my view. I mean, it happens even in, a bar fight. The first time somebody throws a fist, everything changes. And our late friend Clive James was in Cambridge in 1968 when the Garden Hotel riots happened, which was big news in Cambridge at the time, but not everybody historically remembers it. There was 68ers, they were imitating it in Cambridge, England. For some reason, they protested outside this hotel, and somebody threw a brick at the hotel. And I remember Clive said that's when everything changed. The nature of violence suddenly was on the table. And I think that if you're a student at Columbia or whatever, The really interesting thing, I think I said this to you the other day, the really interesting thing I think that's happening at the moment is that they've picked up an interesting tactic of Hamas. And I think Eric Weinstein said this first, but they've picked up a tactic which is, Hamas's tactic is, please kill my people for the cameras. Or even kill me for the cameras, or kill my son for the cameras. And students at Columbia and elsewhere seem to be saying, hit me or hurt me, policeman, for the cameras. So it is actually a sort of low-level version of something which is a much more brutal level, is a tactic.
And the tactic, I think we should explain to the viewers, is a tactic that's been utilized by Hamas for decades.
I don't know who chose the lighting for this podcast, but it is awful behind them, super blown out, and the audio on her side is terrible.
Which is to fight, to use human beings as shields, civilians as shields, hide behind children, put their military facilities in mosques, in hospitals, in schools, in markets, knowing full well that when Israel retaliates, that it's these children who will be killed, and then there's the horror of war would be then on the screens of Western consumers of the news.
Yeah.
And that propaganda element of them condemning Israel is what works for them. So you are saying, and Eric is saying, that that tactic is now being deployed by...
Yes.
I've never heard such monotone speech in my life. I still think she's awesome, yeah, but I don't know. The whole setup of the whole podcast was very confusing to me. That is true. Hamas uses their civilians as pawns. They want you to see dead civilians. They want you to see amputated limbs. They want you to see explosions. They want you to see destroyed homes, because then their propaganda works. Then their parrots on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram are going to get to work and have something to do with their lives and spread this misinformation as if Israel is the aggressor and they are the oppressed. They are the people being played with, and it will affect your way of thinking. You can't actually take a look at the situation in a rational way. You choose to look at it in an emotional way, which clouds your judgment. If we open our eyes just a little bit, and we don't forget about what happened on October 7th, and we don't forget what happened during the first Intifada, where they killed so many people, so many civilians, same as the second Intifada, same as the knife Intifada in 2015, and same as all the wars that they started against us. Thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets were fired to Israel at innocent civilians, and the world stood silent. The tactic of using children didn't start with Hamas. This tactic has been used for many, many, many years, even with Yasser Arafat, with the PLO, with the Fadayin attacks. Children and civilians are always utilized to cause rage within the international community. It always works. But thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe. We're almost at 50,000 subscribers. And until next time, bye-bye.